What do I think about the album? I think it's revolutionary, to be honest with you. Without them, there wouldn't be anybody else, whichever way you look at it. See them as like the equivalent to the Beatles in indie music.
The group's name itself is controversial. Niggers with Attitude, known as NWA, has taunted law enforcement with its lyrics urging violence against police. But it is the group's sexually explicit lyrics that attracted attention from the Attorney General's office.
You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge.
Boys and girls, if you don't know what we're talking about by now, then you need to go do some research on your music, because if I haven't made it obvious up to now, then oh, am I about to make it perfectly clear in this video. Today, ladies and gentlemen, oh, we are making history. I say that a lot. On this channel, but for me, this could be one of the most important videos I make on this channel. I don't know how long we're going to be going on this video. I'm just gonna let it flow, because I have got so much to talk about on this, and it's going to be a ride. So, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce to you NWA's debut album, Straight Outta Compton. Now this, I don't need to state how important this album is to hip-hop, but I'm going to do it anyway. This album is possibly the most important step in not just gangster rap, but hip-hop in general. You had the first generation of, your Grandmaster Flashes, your Funkmaster Flexes, the Sugar Hill Gang, all them people, pioneers. But this is the next step in the evolution of hip-hop, 100%. This album was released on the 8th of August 1988, and when it dropped, it absolutely changed the world. Not all for the good, some people might say. I disagree with those people, but mostly for the better. Because if you look at the lineage that this album has left us, not just the music, but the artists that came from it, the 4 major talented artists that came from this and forged their own path in hip-hop history. And you can't say that a lot about, groups that have broken up and, sort of all been successful in their own right. I don't need to talk about Dr. Dre's success. He's a billionaire. He's a billionaire because it all started here. It all started with him producing the records along with Yella on this album. It went on to him owning half of Death Row. You know who he introduced us to? Eminem, Snoop Dogg, Kendrick Lamar, just to name a few people who he's worked with and a few people who he's introduced to the world. Those people have made paths of their own and cemented the name in history. I don't need to talk about Ice Cube. Ice Cube writing the lyrics, most of the lyrics for this, along with MC Ren. Ice Cube forging his own path once he left NWA in the 90s. Movie star, TV star. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, the lineup that this produced. Easy, a guy who was never even meant to be a rapper, a guy who was never ever meant to even be in this business. He literally just came into this business because he wanted to buy studio time. He wanted to create a label, but they give him a chance, and it turned out he had one of the most iconic, unique voices in the history of this game that we call hip-hop. MC Ren, one of the most underrated music producers of all time, and I mean that in every sense of the word. Not only is his voice, for me, one of the most underrated voices of all time, it's so... you're listening to MC Ren as soon as you hear him. His writing skills are fantastic, and you see this on the album. You see this all the way through the album. It's a different style of music when MC Ren is making it. It's a different style of music when MC Ren is on the mic, because he has this sort of style that sort of blends together what they're trying to produce here. The gangster rap, but mixed with a bit of the older generation, a bit of the funk era. And and I don't understand what happened. MC Ren for me is, I'd say, possibly in my top 5 underrated artists of all time. One, and that's not even an exaggeration. Yella doesn't get a lot of appreciation, but like a lot of people forget that Yella, along with Dre, produced every single song on this record. So this album, should I say? Record is an understatement. But we're getting into it. I do want to talk about, as I say, August 8th, 1988, it dropped. It was released under Ruthless Records, which is a subsidiary of Priority Records. This is an interesting story in itself, and I'm going to talk about it because it's related to the album. Priority Records approached Eazy-E and the rest of NWA. Eazy-E, by the way, being the manager / owner of Ruthless Records. So he kind of had the final say in what goes on the albums, of what goes on, you know, what projects go out. Priority Records approach him and says, we want to work with NWA. But the catch is, we want to change the name to Priority with NWA, or Priority Records with NWA. It was something like that. And all the rest of the group was down for it. They were like, let's go get this money. Let's go get a bag. Eazy said no. Eazy held off on it. And not only did they start working with Priority anyway, they managed to keep the name that's so iconic today. So what a business mind this man had. Like, you all know the history of Eazy. He was a drug dealer. He was, he was all about that life in every sense of the word. He was the epitome of NWA. He might be one of the realest out of them all. But moving on, I do want to talk about the album cover before I even start talking about the songs. This is a really cool story in itself. I did have the name of the guy who actually originally, took the picture for the album cover. It's a really funny story. I'll get the name of the guy as I'm talking about it. So basically, this wasn't even really supposed to be the album cover. They were going around Compton, and they were just taking flash pictures for advertisements and stuff like that. And this was before they had an entourage or anything. This was before they made it big time. This was before the album even came out. They had a bit of buzz around them in the neighborhood and like in the city, but they weren't off up to now. I mean, I believe at the time that Boys in the Hood was a single, and that was making them a lot of money, and that was, that's what got them popping at the start. But at the time, as I say, like they weren't millionaires or anything. They didn't have like a massive crew. I'm just having a look. That's his name. His name was Eric Poppleton. That was his name. If you've ever seen this album cover, it's sort of a view of the camera looking up and looking down are all 6 members of the group. And the way they achieved this was they were walking through an alley, and Eric just like sat on the floor, like just sort of lay down, and all the guys leaned over him, and just started staring down at the camera. And in a very iconic photo, you can actually see in the album cover, Eazy-E's pointing a gun at the album. He's the one pointing the gun at the album. And I thought this was interesting because it was never supposed to be the album cover, and it was just out of the blue, and it turned out to be one of the most recognizable album covers in history. But without further ado, let's get into the music.
This is what went into the record. Just imagine this. We made this record straight out of Compton. Here we are sitting down talking about it fucking 25 years later. Plus, there's a big ass movie coming out, and we only spent 6 weeks on this record. It took us 6 weeks to record this record. And that's without recording on the weekends. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's how much energy we put into it. Like I said, we were just trying to make some records for our neighborhood and to be stars in Los Angeles. Right. And it just went crazy.
First song, just in general, the first 3 songs on this album are probably their 3 biggest tunes. Which is something to say because every single song on this album is an absolute tune, absolute banger. But the very first, same title as the album, Straight Outta Compton. You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge. Tell them where you're from. Ice Cube, MC Ren, and Eazy-E. They just kill it on this song. What can I say about this song? As I say, it was chosen for the title of the album. It's also the title of the film that came out years and years later. The video is dead iconic as well. It was one of the songs that was pointed out by the news. To say it was causing a lot of trouble causing a lot of uproar in the White House, like just a lot of just bad news in general for this group. They didn't give a shit, but they were certainly making waves in, you know, the public eye as a group that weren't really public friendly, but they didn't give a shit, and that's what made the music, and that's what made them iconic as a group.
MTV banned them. What MTV banned in that video?
MTV. Word. Profanity.
Yeah.
A lot of people can relate to profanity.
But despite being banned in many places, NWA sold 3 million copies of their Straight Outta Compton album. Their message that cops abused them when they were growing up hit home with a lot.
Moving straight on to possibly the biggest, and this isn't an understatement once again, maybe the biggest rap song ever, just because what it stood for. You got Fuck the Police at number 2. Fuck the Police is probably bigger than this album in general, mainly because of all the stirred up shit it caused, because of all the publicity it brought NWA. Not all of it good, most of it wasn't good. Pointing out the racism in the LAPD, and this proved to be true. And like, a lot of people didn't really see what was going on in South Central LA. A lot of young black men and women were being treated wrong just because of what they look like.
A lot of people.
5 white guys walking together are friends. 5 black guys walking together is a gang. In the police eyes. You know what I'm saying? And they have you like this and head down and you be on the concrete.
And this song just sort of shone a spotlight on what was going on in the early 80s and the late 80s and early 90s. And we saw even more proof of this a couple of years later, only 4 years later, when we saw the footage of Rodney King being attacked by, I think it was like 4 or 5 LAPD officers. And you can mainly see there's 2 in particular absolutely beating the shit out of him, which is what caused the 1992 LA riots. But this is where it all started. They were banned from singing this at some shows. The police tried to shut down the shows. There was a particular scene in the film that was quite poignant, to be honest, because Ice Cube confirmed it was true, and it was very poignant because it was a great example of what happened at most shows that they tried to go to. There was a bit where they went to Detroit and the police told them you can't play this song, and you can't do anything to do with this. Don't play it, or else we're going to shut down and you'll get arrested on the spot immediately. So it all kicked off because Dre, Ice Cube had something to say. And that's where it started. Fuck the Police, coming straight from the underground. I ain't going to say the rest because I can't. The song in general, the song opens up with a little bit of a skit in the court, and it's sort of reversed where it's NWA versus the police department. Dr. Dre is acting as the judge. The police are the criminals, are the ones being brought to trial, and the people on the stand giving evidence. And the jury are Eazy, MC Ren, and Ice Cube. And just reading the lyrics, you don't even need to hear the song, but like just listening to say if I read them out to you now, or if anyone just read them out to you, don't, as I say, you don't even need to listen to the song. Just the words in this, it's no surprise that they got in trouble for it, 100%. Especially, I believe, in my opinion, like MC Ren's is the most like dangerous lyrics, because he just talks about shooting police. He talks about getting him in a jail cell and beating the fuck out of him. Really, really like dark shit. Really dark shit. And I'm not surprised they got in trouble for this song. I don't think they should have, because at the end of the day, it's free speech. So, you know what you're gonna do about that, basically. Number three is Gangsta Gangsta. As I say, another one of NWA's top tunes. Gangsta Gangsta was Ice Cube by himself, just rapping by himself. I believe it was also him with the help of MC Ren that wrote the lyrics for this song as well. Going back to Fuck the Police, by the way, before we talk about Gangsta Gangsta. The story in the film, and I was gonna talk about this and I just completely forgot. We've moved on to the next song. But the story in the film is actually incorrect. In the story, you see, it's very different, and I only learned this quite recently because I was doing research for this video. But in the film, you see him in the studio, and they go outside because there's police harassing him, and then you see, you know, the police getting him on the ground, and Jerry Heller's shouting at the police, and the police are shouting back, and, you know, all the gangs face down with their hands on their head. That's not what actually happened, because apparently it's very, very different, and I'll get into the story now, but as you see in the film, they go back into the studio and Ice Cube hands Dr. Dre, you know, the lyrics for Fuck the Police, and he's like, oh yeah, that's good, yeah, we're going to do that. But in real life, what actually happened was Dr. Dre actually originally turned down this song. He didn't think it was going to be very helpful in terms of, you know, them making a name for themselves, because, I mean, what happened. Like, what Dr. Dre thought was going to happened in real life when they eventually released the song. You know, they got loads of public attention, but in just a negative way. You got all of white America basically shitting all over him. You got the FBI coming to the door, you know, talking about them making threats and everything. But so yeah, Dr. Dre actually turned this down originally. What changed his mind was he was going down the highway. He and his mates were in one car. The other guys were in another car, going down the highway, hanging out the window, shooting paintball guns at each other. So the police show up, obviously stop all of it, pull them over, and they like there's footage of this as well, I believe, as well. They just drag him to the ground, and it's pretty violent. And this is what turned Dre's mind around. He was like, actually, yeah, we're gonna make this song, and, you know, fuck it, fuck the police. And this is why he wanted to make it, because he thought the treatment that he got was unfair. I don't know about that. To be honest, I don't know what they was expecting. Firing, you know, fucking guns. Not actual, I mean, it's not real guns, but still, on a highway, on a loaded highway, in the middle of Los Angeles. I don't know what they expect. But moving on to Gangsta, as I say, this was Ice Cube's first song on the album, and it might have been, it might have been his first song rapping by himself. Really good song, this. It was featured as recently as I believe it was part of the trailer for the film, and it's also on Grand Theft Auto 5. It's on one of the radio stations on there. But it's been in quite a lot of things as well. Like the backbeat especially has been used in quite a lot of different forms of media. Really good song. Gangsta. I think it's probably I'm gonna say it's probably one of my top songs on this album. Like top three maybe. But we're gonna get to what my favorite song is on this album definitely in a bit. But Gangsta, yeah. Coming up next after that, this is one of the most underrated songs on the album in my opinion, and it totally switches lanes in terms of, like, you know, what kind of music it is and what kind of, you know, what kind of style they're going for. Because a lot of people talk about NWA and Straight Outta Compton and how, you know, thuggish it was, how gangster it was, how violent it was. Not a lot of people talk about the other side of it. The other side of this album in terms of it had a lot of funk inspiration on every tune as well, like especially on the, you know, the album, the I'm getting tongue tied, the you know, the on the album released tunes on it. So obviously you had singles like Gangsta and Straight Outta Compton, Fuck the Police, but like on the songs that was only released on the album, like there's a lot of funk inspired tunes on this, and in my opinion, this is one of my favorite. This is one of my favorite songs in terms of just the beat and MC Ren's flow. By the way, MC Ren wrote this song, as I say, and if you listen to the song, you can really hear the difference between Ice Cube's writing and MC Ren's writing. MC Ren's writing is more sort of, you know, old school Sugar Hill Gang sort of flow. As in, it's a little bit faster, it's a little more upbeat, and it's a little more you know, G-funk. And, you know, mixed a little bit in with the NWA style and NWA sort of, like, you know, beat making, but, like, really like this tune. Definitely go check it out. It's one of my favourite on the album, as I say, and it's really, really good. The next one is, let's have a look, Parental Discretion is Advised, and this is a really cool one, because on this album and on this tune, not only do you have, like, little cameos in, like, you know, the backbeats and, like, you know, just, like, little samples from, like, different artists from different eras, but on this song, on Parental Discretion is Advised, you got the DOC in the opening part, and he gets to show off his skill. If you don't know the story about DLC, it was pretty tragic, to be honest. I mean, he didn't die, but he was involved in quite a bad car accident which crushed his larynx, I believe. So I don't know if you ever heard the DLC talk. You'll probably recognize his voice very well if you've listened to albums like The Chronic and Doggy Style, and just from that era, because his voice is very iconic in terms of he's got a really raspy, gravelly voice because of this, and it essentially ended his rap career. But he managed to transition into the producing and the writing side of hip hop, which is good for him. But he opens on this really good song. DLC was really good. I want to talk about a bit of what the DLC actually did as well, like in this era. Like just a year later, on with the help of Dr. Dre and everything, like just that team in general, he was able to release his own music. And the album that he brought out, the album name like slips me now, but Funky Enough was on it. If it ain't Funky Enough, I believe that's the song. That's a really good tune. Definitely go check that out. But yeah, Parental Discretion is Advised. Really good song. I really enjoy that song. I think it's a great tune. I'm just looking at because I want to talk about loads of like things that are on this album, but I don't really want to miss anything. So I wrote down a couple of notes, and just to like refresh my memory. And I was like, let's see, we talked about It Ain't Funky, Parental Discretion. Yeah, the DLC, as I say, actually starts this song, and then you've got Dr. Dre making his very first debut, I believe, in terms of like rapping for himself. I just say he's mainly known on this album for a couple of collaborations. A little bit later on, he's got his own single on this song, which is really good. But he's known mostly for the beats, alongside DJ Yella. But he does, as I say, he makes his own cameos on songs, and he's look at his career. He's made his own great albums. So this is where it all started. So fair play to Dr. Dre. It's got to be hard in terms of, and this is the same goes for Eazy as well. This is the same goes for Eazy, just because for those two guys who weren't really prepared. I mean, they've been like, Dr. Dre had been like, rapping a little bit for a couple of years, and mainly DJing, but like it's got to be difficult to really go out there and like a mainstream album, an album that you're gonna know is either gonna sink your group or catapult it to the stars, because they had a bit of buzz about him, and they knew they needed to release this album just because it was gonna make their names, like it was gonna put them down in history, and for him to put it all out on the line and want to contribute, you gotta respect that. Really good. And as you say, you see where he is now, and you see what he's accomplished into like just by himself, like with The Chronic and 2001 The Chronic, and all the cameos that he's made on albums, just fantastic. Also appearing on this was obviously Ren. You got Ice Cube and Eazy-E. I believe this was one of the first songs, apart from Straight Outta Compton, that all of them featured on. So really good song, really good song. I keep saying this every single time about the songs, but also one of my favorite songs on this album. 8 Ball, that was just Eazy by himself. Eazy-E had come into his own around the time of this album. A couple months later, so this was released in August, and then September, he released his debut album, Easy Does It, under the same Ruthless Records. Boys in the Hood was on that, and Easier Said Than Done. Two of Eazy's probably most well-known songs, really good songs. Eazy-E, I'm not going to make any bones about it, he's my favourite rapper of all time. I love his story, and I love what he brought to the table on this album in terms of, as I say, it's the same goes for Dre as well. He wasn't really ever supposed to be a rapper, and then he turned out to have one of the most iconic voices in hip hop history. So it's funny how it all works out, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? So let's have a look. Just having a look now. Easy. And then on the next song, you've got sort of a duet from MC Ren and Dr. Dre, and it's called Something Like That. This is like one of the most like different songs, if you know what I mean, from this album, in terms of, I think this song really works well because it's not like anything that's really come before this. I mean, yeah, you've had like, you know, your little bit of funky tunes, a bit like if it ain't like that, or I think Gangsta is a little bit more funky as well. But this is like sort of like they sort of like take turns like spitting. They take turns in terms of like, you know, when their flow comes, but at the start like they sort of like rap the chorus at the same time. It's really interesting the way they put this together. I really enjoy this song. I always go back to this song when, you know, I'm going through like my NWA playlist and like, you know, late 80s, early 90s playlist, and I really enjoy this song. I think it's very, very good. Speaking of very, very good, this is my favourite song on the album. I don't give a shit what anyone says. This is my favourite song on the album. It's absolutely fantastic. We're talking, of course, about Express Yourself. Dr. Dre, first time ever, rapping by himself on a song. Fantastic. Obviously, all the samples on this album are ridiculous, but probably the most well-known sample on this album was Charles Wright's Express Yourself. By the way, there's a rumour going around, and I don't know why this is a rumour because it's 100% not true. I don't know when it started or how it started, but there was a rumour, and it's still sort of going around nowadays, that Charles Wright, the person who originally, you know, wrote Express Yourself, you know, all you got to do now, that guy, was Eazy's uncle, just because they have the same surname. I'm here to tell you that is not true. That I don't know where that started. That is not true whatsoever. Like, I don't know how people even came to think that shit, but no, just no. And that's all I'm gonna say about that. But Express Yourself, really good. I think it might have been Ice Cube and MC Ren both helped write this song, and really good this tune, because it mainly talks about, and I want to throw a clip up in a minute about people being themselves in music, and Dr. Dre really talks about artists and all that, you know, being someone else on the stage and then going backstage and being a totally different person, and I think it's very, very interesting to see, like, you know, what NWA thought of other people at the time compared to them, if you know what I mean. Because obviously they wanted to be who they wanted to be. They didn't give a crap about, you know, what people thought of them. But they also had opinions on, you know, why artists couldn't be themselves on stage and in real life. You know, why couldn't those people be the same person? And it's really interesting to see what they said in interviews as well, in terms of in terms of like, it's funny because like people usually look back and talk about that sort of stuff. Just want to throw a quick clip up now.
NWA not only changed music, but we changed pop culture all over the world, because we made it all right for artists to be themselves. You know, you didn't have to be squeaky clean to be just as big or bigger than the squeaky clean artists. You know, it was artists out there who wasn't being themselves. You know, on record, there was all these nice guys behind the scenes, you know what I mean? They was thugged out. So we was like, yo, we're gonna be ourselves no matter what. On record, off record, we're gonna be ourselves and let the chips fall where they may. And I think it opened the floodgates for artists who wanted to walk on this side and to be a little raw, you know, and not be so squeaky clean.
I worry about being on the radio. And
Yeah,
all that
you know,
shit,
all
you know
these
what I mean?
worries that artists used to hold on to them because there was no other avenues, there was no other examples of a person not doing it the square way and being successful. And here we come as the example, not only for musicians, but for all artists.
See, I think that was really interesting just to see what they thought about it at the time. As I say, because people usually look back at that and say that sort of stuff, but no, people just don't usually have that kind of foresight in the moment, that they knew they were doing something different, and they knew that no one had really done it before they had done it. Do you know what I mean? Like, if that makes any sense. But Express Yourself, as I say, probably my favourite song on the album. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Next song is Compton's in the House, MC Ren and Dre again. Sort of doing the same sort of flow they did on the previous song. Sort of like, coming in at the same time, doing their own sort of shit, and then, very well put together. And as I say, a lot of people don't give NWA credit. A lot of people say it was, just gangster shit. Like, people just, like, read it off as it's just drivel. And obviously people don't think that now, but go back and listen to this album, and it's not all gangster shit. It's not all talking about shooting police and, like, violence and, fucking, killing people and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of really good songs in this album that just sort of, like, speak for themselves, if you know what I mean. Very well put together. Next song is I Ain't the One. Ice Cube once again coming in by himself on this tune, and this is a really interesting story on this song. Just what he talks about. You've got women in the song just asking him for money all the time, and Ice Cube's like, "What? Why do you need money for hair? Didn't you just have your hair done? You don't need a new bag, blah blah blah." And the story is basically about Ice Cube having to, like, give women loads of money now that he's famous and stuff, then wanting lifts everywhere. And I just thought it was funny because it was a very early example of how good Ice Cube was at telling stories, and how Ice Cube, was able to paint a picture in words. Very interesting to see a really young Ice Cube here in 1988 talk about shit that he'd be talking about later in later albums like the Death Certificate. Just an example, by the way, my favourite album, I think, by Ice Cube, Death Certificate. And it's just interesting to see in songs like, It Was a Good Day, a really good song by Ice Cube. And this was the most early example, in my opinion, of him, telling a really good story by himself. I mean, obviously, he wrote most of the songs alongside MC Ren for NWA in general, but this was him just stepping out and, getting on a beat and telling a story himself, which I thought was really interesting. Moving on to my second favourite song on the album, Dope Man. I like the remix and I like the original, but I like the original because there's like a knock at the door, like just like a little bit of a skit at the beginning. Like Eazy-E's like playing the role that he was very accustomed to because he'd done it before. He was playing the role of a drug dealer, and he's like, "What you need?" And the guy comes to the door and goes, I need a 20, man. And he goes, "What you got?" And he goes, like, "I got this gold chain, man." And he's like, "That's some fake ass bullshit." And then it's like, obviously the iconic where it's like, "Yo, Dre, kick it, the bass." And then probably my favorite sound in hip hop. I love the sound of that really piercing sound of the synthesizer. That really like high pitched whistle. I love that. In hip hop. It screams to me. That sound screams to me West Coast hip hop, if you know what I mean. That's the sound I think of when I think why I love hip hop, because it's just so, it represents exactly what hip hop is. You've got that really high pitched screaming whistle. It's in your face and it's like, unavoidable because you can't get away from that sound. And for me, that's what hip hop is for me. In your face, telling a story, just absolutely out there, and you can't avoid it because you'll just fall in love with it if you listen to it enough. And Dope Man for me is great. It's got one of the best ending skits to a song. I just think it's really funny because they talk about in this song. They talk about a crack fiend, and they talk about this guy that was at the start of the video asking for crack. And they talk about how like his girlfriend's a crackhead and she pays for drugs like with sex and all that sort of stuff. And he comes back at the end of I'm gonna try and do it. At the end of the song, he comes back and he knocks on the door and he goes, "Hey, Mr. Dope Man, you think you're slick? You sold crack to my sister and now she's slick or sick or something." And he goes, "But if she happens to die because of your drugs, I'll put in your culo a 38 slug." And then just like shoots like the door down. It's not like. What? I just thought that was really funny, and mainly as well because, as I say, this was their first album, and they showed so much like knowledge of what makes an album like iconic and what makes an album memorable. Skits like that, and beats like that, and just like sampling of music like that really sticks in your head. I mean, for me anyway, that's what really sticks in my head when I think of an album. But moving on to the next one, By the way, on Don't Man, it was Ice Cube and Eazy. Eazy was mainly on the remix, and it's mostly Ice Cube that actually sings this song. But moving on to the next one, Quiet on the Set, absolute tune. This was featured in the trailer for Straight Outta Compton. I'm not sure which one it is, but if my memory serves me correctly, it's the same one where on Netflix, you know, when you see like a preview on Netflix, it's the same trailer there, and they're in the studio, and MC Ren singing Quiet on the Set while he's in the studio, where there's loads of people partying in the lobby. Really good song. This for me is in my top 5. It's not in my top 3 of this. As I say, like, I've already gone up through my top 2. You got Express Yourself as a number 1. It will always be my number 1. But yeah, this is definitely in my top 5. And then, like, coming to the last one, Something to Dance To. And this really shows the range, as I say, for NWA for me, because this is totally different to anything else that they do in this album. It's not, they barely rap on it, and they barely say a word on it. It's mainly like just like a load of samples of what they've already used on, like, you know, the tracks that they've done for this, on the tracks that they've done for Easy Does It. And they just put like a really cool sort of early 80s sort of like dance beat to it, where it's like a little bit of like hip hop. Like, you know, like you see like films that are based in like New York in the early 80s, when you see like, you know, people breakdancing on the streets and everything. That's exactly what this like reminds me of, where it's literally just music, and it's like at the start they go, I'm tired, put something I want to dance to, and like it's almost like they're saying, oh fucking hell, we've rapped enough, I don't want to fucking talk anymore. Amazing. But as I say, that's the end of the album, guys. For me, one of the things that stands out on this album was all the samples, and this is what I love about early hip hop, especially in the mid to late 80s. Rap was basically, you know, still getting off its feet, heading to, you know, to step out by itself. So at the time, they didn't really have anything to work with. They didn't really know what they were going for, really. So they sampled like old school, you know, 70s music, like, you know, funky 70s music, and, you know, they repurposed that for themselves. And I love that. I absolutely love that. I think it's fantastic. But you see in every single song, there's a really interesting video on YouTube if you want to look at it. I watched it a couple of years ago. I can't remember exactly what I typed in to find it, but if you just type in something like NWA Straight Outta Compton beat samples, and that should come up with the thing that I'm talking about. It's really interesting, like, because it goes over every song that it goes like a song by song, and it looks at every single song in particular, and then like shows the sample and what it came from. And it goes through every single song, and it's very interesting. I love it. I love that sort of shit. And anyone who's a fan of hip hop like me will enjoy just watching that. Just sitting there watching just like a random little. This was taken from this. This 1 second clip was taken from this. So that's what keeps me coming back to this era of hip hop. Not just the talent that was created in this time, but the beats as well. You know, made the songs what they are, because they just sampled other great genres of music, and I thought it was absolutely fantastic.
Well, I mean, what we were trying to accomplish was just having a say in what was going on. You know, you got to understand we were voiceless at the time, and they were really being very aggressive and abusive in the community, and we didn't have no kind of way to kind of put our point of view out there, or, you know, we had to kind of use this music as our only weapon against what was happening to the community. So it was really just like nonviolent protest in a way.
Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. It took a while to put together, mainly because obviously, you know, we've got the interview clips, we've got the news clips, we've got my main man calling in, giving his opinion on stuff. Shout out to Gilly. Thank you, my friend. Thank you very much for like giving me some of your little opinions on there. I thought it was very interesting. He mentioned something very interesting in what I'm about to tell you now. In fact, no, I'm not going to tell. I'm going to let him tell you. Yo, Gilly, what are you saying about this?
But my out and out favourite, maybe I'd have to say Quiet on the Set, to be honest with you, because one of my personal favourite hip hop albums is Naughty by Nature, 1999, and I feel like in a strange sort of way it semi like correlates. It's got a bit of correspondence to it, like they sound really familiar. To be fair, for what it's worth, it's pretty insane.
As I say, really interesting comment, like the Naughty by Nature comment, in terms of, I know where he's going with it as well, because he's talking about his favourite song, and I know where he's going with it, because it does scream, Naughty by Nature in general scream early 80s anyway, and I think it's a very good comparison in terms of, you know, his favourite song, and then, you know, what he thinks of the Naughty by Nature. I think they're very similar indeed, definitely 100%. But guys, we're going to call it a day there. I have enjoyed putting this together so much for you. NWA, Straight Outta Compton, 100%. Go back and listen to it. It never gets old. It's a timeless classic. It produced some of the greatest music in hip-hop. The people that were in the group produced their own music in hip-hop. And if you want me to, and I definitely really want me to, if you definitely really want me to, I mean, to be honest, I'm probably going to do it anyway, because I don't give a fuck. Because it's just a great fucking story. But I want to do the whole story of NWA, sort of like a Straight Outta Compton sort of documentary, in terms of what I follow, you know, from like a certain time till like the end of like a period of a certain time. I want to follow what they did in that sort of area. It'll be a bit of a longer video, but I want to see if we can do that, and if we put it together. It'll be sort of like this, where we've got like a lot of samples and a lot of like interview segments, you know, just to see how that goes. But I think that'd be a really interesting video. I really hope you've enjoyed this video, guys. If you have enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Please subscribe to the channel, because this is the biggest video we've done so far, and we're only going to be moving on up for the rest. I think this is a milestone, and we've only been going a month. So as I say, this is only the beginning for Chart Topper Radio, for CTR, #CTR. If you like, subscribe, then go to the Facebook page, request a follow, I will accept your follow. Go to the Instagram, give all the stuff a like, give us a follow on Instagram. We're trying to build our following on Instagram, ironically enough. Please go show it some love. With that said, thanks to Jake, my editor. Absolutely amazing job on this video, mate. Gilly, thank you for your answering my questions that I sent you. I really appreciate it. With that said, guys, if you do want to get involved in any other future video, just give me a message, and I will definitely I'll definitely see what I can do for you. Thanks very much, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. I love you all. Peace.
Damn, that shit was dope.